Welcome everyone. I hope you're all ready and excited for your first game of D&D 5th edition. I've got your character sheets.
Yeah, I got it right here. I'm playing a wizard.
Very well. For the first out of 6 encounters today, you walk in the woods and you see with the dice. It is a owl bear and 2 goblins and slime.
Okay, I'm not sure what they're doing together, but I'm going... Are they all, like, standing in the same place?
Yeah, they're all around a great stone that they're looking at.
Okay, around a stone. That's a normal thing that monsters do. I'm gonna walk in and just cast Thunderwave to hit all of them.
Okay, you do so, and it seems like you do 15 damage to all of them. Well done. It is now their turn, so they get up and they start running at you. You're surrounded and you take 28 points of damage.
Well, I'm not just gonna stand there. I'm not gonna wait for them to get up and start running at me. I'm gonna, like, get back into the group.
I'm afraid the game says you can't do that.
Why not?
You're busy.
Busy doing what?
Waiting for your turn.
Oh yeah, I'm busy waiting for my turn. That very real thing that people do. Okay, sure. So I take that damage. I'm going to take out my dagger, and I'm going to, like, walk to one of the goblins and stab him in the eye.
Do you have a move for stabbing people in the eye?
No, I don't. Can't I just go over to him and, like, try to stab him in the eye?
No, you can't. You can't do that. You want to roll to attack?
Yeah, I'll roll to attack. Okay, I got, okay, I missed, so I guess I don't do anything.
No, you do something. You take out your daggers and it glistens in the sunlight. You see it reflect its rays all across the battlefield. A horse comes out from the side and gallops next to you. You go on top of it and it begins flying upwards towards the sky. You feel the fire in your belly and the glint in your eyes as you take out your dagger and go straight towards the goblin, who just barely and narrowly misses your blade.
So I miss.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video. In this one we are going to talk about why combat actually in D&D many times can be boring. So come along with me and we discover many things about D&D combat we didn't know before. Stay with us, beginning immediately. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video. This is GDS. Somebody told me that my intro saying ladies and gentlemen sounds like I'm a TV announcer, so I thought I might as well just own it. And I did the Israeli accent too because I thought it would be funny. I don't know. It might come back later, we'll see. Anyways, yes, this one is about D&D combat. And I'll say something just to get it out of the way, okay? D&D 5th edition, I think you could argue for other editions too, but everyone is playing 5th edition. Not a single person right now is playing any other edition, and that's a fact, okay? Now, just because it's not true doesn't mean I can't believe it's true. Anyways, 5th edition is a war game. And if you want evidence for this, it's pretty clear. There are 3 major books for D&D 5th edition. There is the Player's Handbook, which tells you how to play the game, the DMG, or the DM's Guide, which tells you how to run the game, and then the Monster Manual that's filled with shit to kill. Plus, if you actually check the classes and their skills, almost every skill, I would say like 90% of them, are to do with combat. Even in classes which are supposed to be focused on like social interaction, like the Mastermind, which by the way is absolute garbage, even then, most of the skills are to do with combat. A lot of people online, when they talk about this topic, are somewhat confused. They say something like, playing D&D as a war game or just combat is boring, so if you play that way, it's bad, you should be adding, I don't know, NPCs, kissing game, whatever, stuff like that. The problem here is that I never said, and I don't think many people are saying, that playing D&D just as a war game and just as a combat game is fun. Actually, I think more people would agree that as a combat game, D&D is really bad. So we're not saying that D&D should be a combat game and should be played as a combat game. We're saying, as a matter of fact, that D&D is a combat game. Its mechanics and its rulebooks are oriented towards running a combat game. So please note that description. I'm not saying D&D must be played as a combat game. I am saying it is a combat game. Those are two different claims. Now, most people agree that D&D 5th edition combat kind of sucks. The degree to which they think it sucks changes, but most people agree there is at least something that's not good. And I think there are far too many reasons for that to go over in this video. What I would rather do is go over the things that I think can be easily solved. I think that's more productive. And if you want evidence for people thinking D&D combat sucks, just go online and look up, I don't know, anything related to D&D combat, and you'll find it. Okay, there are so many people asking, how do I make D&D combat fun? Or how do I make D&D combat interesting? Now imagine buying a candy bar on Amazon. You're ordering it online, and all the reviews for it say, it's a good candy bar, but is there any way to make this taste any good? You probably wouldn't buy this candy bar, which is why I find it a little bit ridiculous that people still use 5th edition for combat, even though so many of them think the combat sucks. But hey, I'm not here to criticize too much, though in moderation. I'm just here to showcase some problems which I think D&D combat has, and then offer some solutions. I think the first problem comes at the beginning of combat, and the problem is the beginning of combat. I think video games have trained us that there is a combat phase where combat music just starts playing and you know, okay, I'm just fighting now. But this is not what really happens in real life or in the pulp fantasy. I think this is what happens only in video games and should remain in video games because it's kind of boring. What most people are missing from their games is escalation. And escalation into combat is more interesting because it has a social aspect as well. Imagine you have two ships, and one of them is the player ship, the other one is a random merchant ship. And the merchant ship hails over and they say, "Oi, Captain, we lost our map." Okay, they lost their map, that's a little bit sketchy. "Oi, can we have a copy of yours?" Okay, now they want a copy of us. Okay, we don't know if they're gonna fight us. So maybe we should just, let's stop next to them. And, okay, no boards yet. Let's stop. Hey guys, do you need some help? Yeah? Yeah, we need a copy of your map. You mind if we lower the boards? Lower the boards? They could be pirates. Pirates. Could we fight them? Maybe. I don't want to lower the board. Oh, they just lowered a board. Do we fight them? They just lowered another one. Do we fight them? Are these merchants with bad social skills, or are these pirates? That's a good question, and it's interesting. It's gonna make an interesting interaction. The escalation into combat, and also keep in mind it doesn't have to escalate into combat, is often far more interesting than the combat itself. Another thing we see from this, which is kind of contrary to the way 5th edition is usually planned, and I know because I've planned D&D 5th edition games where I've done exactly the same thing, is you shouldn't make combat encounters. You shouldn't be making encounters with the purpose of it being combat. You should be making encounters which are social that maybe have a high likelihood of developing into combat. But I don't think we should be making combat encounters. And that's not because there is something just essentially wrong about using combat. It's because when you make a combat encounter, you make many assumptions that make the encounter itself boring because it's all just about combat. What's far more interesting in combat situations is the stake, the leading up, and then eventually the aftermath, which I think we should talk about next. A lot of fights in D&D can devolve into a boring roll fest because you have that one enemy who's just not getting hit, and then you have that other enemy who's super far away throwing spells at you, and nobody's dying. But I think we should challenge the assumption, and I think many people have online, that battles have to devolve to death. I think it's far more interesting if we treat our creatures, especially if they're humanoid or intelligent, as things that don't actually want to die. If they see their friend, who just got critted and decapitated next to them, they don't want to fight anymore because they're like, holy shit, this guy just got decapitated. I don't want to get decapitated. So to make combat more interesting and also maybe shorter, make sure that enemies surrender or try to run away. And when you do this, remember this is a social interaction at that point. You can challenge the players in a way that makes it so they don't use their stats at all. Instead, they think about their character from their character's perspective, which is also known as role-playing.
For instance, imagine you defeat a group of mercenaries. These mercenaries were hired, maybe by the crown, maybe they don't even want to be there, but they're just being paid a lot of money. Now, one of them has survived, and the party is over him after killing all of his friends, and instead of begging, he basically just starts cursing at the party and telling them how terrible they are, and basically giving them every excuse to kill them. Is the party going to kill them? It's a good question. It's a good question for the characters in the party. It gives them an opportunity to actually showcase who their characters are. But that's just one example. Another one could be, let's say they chase down an enemy who they know they must kill. That's their quest. They have to kill him, and he starts begging for his life. Are the party really gonna kill him? The choices you give characters allows them to express who they are. Okay, and on to the third thing, which happens more in the meat of combat. So far we've talked about the beginning of combat, and then the aftermath of combat, and now let's talk about really combat itself. I think people have two complaints that are both in the same category of keeping track of monsters. The first one is, holy shit, there's too much shit to keep track of, and the second one is, holy shit, these monsters are really boring. It is true that a lot of D&D monsters are just bags of hit points that roll to attack. And also, since most monsters just clickety-clack roll to attack, when they do survive an entire round with the players, it means they're high level enough to just focus fire on one of the player and bring them down in one turn. In other words, monsters strong enough to survive a single round with the entire party attacking them is also strong enough to just attack one party member and kill them. The problem is that that is not interesting. Where's the interaction? Where's the back and forth? And I think the best way to solve this is just better monster design. We just gotta do better. And luckily, the last video I uploaded was about monster design, so if you're interested in that, I'm gonna include it in the nonsense below. But on to the next complaint. A lot of people say that it's impossible, in some instances, to believably narrate the activity of the players in a way that doesn't break verisimilitude. Even within the pulp fantasy genre, not just as it applies to real life. A good example of this is the rogue, just kind of going in, attacking, going out, going in, attacking, going out, and being stealth the entire time. I mean, how is a GM supposed to possibly narrate this in a way that makes any sorts of sense or has any commitment to objective reality? And there are two answers to this. The first one is you can't. You can't make this in any way believable. It's just ridiculous. So hand wave it and spend as little time as possible narrating it. The second answer is to say, you know what? No, I'm gonna embrace how ridiculous and how stupid this is because I think that's funny. And personally, when I run 5th edition, that's what I do because I do think it's just funny. But if you run a serious game, that might not work. Another complaint is that many people feel when they roll below the AC and they miss, that it sucks. Missing just sucks. And I think they're correct. They correctly deduce that they might as well have not taken their turn because their turn had absolutely zero, nada, nil effect on the game and the outcome of the combat. Missing just sucks. I don't care if it's balanced, that's not really my concern, I just know it's really not fun. So one thing you can do to make it feel less like somebody is just being missed and more like they were doing something is whenever an attack misses them, they get an attack of opportunity as a reaction. This makes it so something still happens when you miss. It's not just nothing. Another thing you can do is make it so when you roll below the AC or at the AC, you deal half damage. I think this is an even easier way to make it so at least something happens. Now, admittedly, this doesn't make it somehow super interesting or make missing somehow more fun. I think it just makes it less not fun. Now, I know what people are saying out in the streets. They're saying, but in combat, people miss. Look at the videos of combat. People miss all the time. And to that I say, I don't care. I don't think that's a good argument. People in real life also poop all the time. That doesn't mean you should have poop mechanics in your game. Though you could argue 5th edition has a lot of shitty mechanics. We can just abstract an attack as an exchange of blows at the end of which somebody gets hit. And before you say we shouldn't abstract stuff, I don't see people having an issue with the abstraction of HP or AC, so I think this is fine. Another thing people might say is that while missing is never fun, being missed is fun. Now, I don't think this is true, because when you get missed, you don't really do anything. They just kind of roll against your AC, and then You just kind of sit there and either they hit or they don't hit. But let's say it is. Let's say for the sake of argument, being missed is fun. Even in that case, we have a mechanic that is at most, if we grant every... But even if we grant that, we have a mechanic that is at most neutral fun. Because if you miss, it's not fun. And if you get missed, it is fun. So together it's just neutral fun. That's not a very good mechanic. And lastly, another response that I see some people saying to this is that failure is just a part of the game. And they are correct, but this is still not a good argument, because you could fail in a way that's still interesting and fun. You can lose an exchange without just missing and doing absolutely nothing. Anyways, the next complaint is that 5th edition kind of murders creativity. Everyone has had new players who are like, I'm gonna go for the eye, or I'm gonna go for the Achilles heel, or something like that. And as the GMs, we just kind of have to tell them, you can't. What happened to role-playing games allowing creativity? So one very valid concern is that if you allow players to, for example, go for the eye and blind the opponent, they're gonna do it every single time. So I think a good mechanic to still allow it while not being OP or breaking the game is when somebody rolls a natural 20, you let them choose some kind of narrative effect their attack is going to have in addition to doing damage. So they do the critical damage, but then they choose some kind of other relevant effect. For example, if you crit against an opponent, you can choose to disarm them, or you could choose to stab them in the eye, or cut off their leg, or something cool like that. Now you know what I'm going to say, before you say it's OP, I don't care. Another complaint, people say there is no drama in death. Players never really feel like they're gonna die, and I think it's because there is just a safety net of death saving throws. Death saving throws basically rob death of any of its drama, even if you look in the pulp fantasy genre. In 5th edition, death and going down is basically a joke that players don't take seriously because they don't have to, because they know just how non-lethal it is. Now, I don't think we should be making the game more lethal. I think we should just get rid of death saving throws. Why do we have them? The only reason your players go to 0 hit points as much as they do is because they know they have the death saving throws. If they don't have them, they're going to be more careful, and they're going to actually go to 0 hit points far less than they are now. So get rid of death saving throws. Doesn't exist. Instead, when you get to 0 hit points, you get 1 round, which is going to be a heroic round. Everything you do has an automatic natural 20. You could do whatever you want in the round, and after the round, you die. I think this works even better within the pulp fantasy genre because we have all seen the last-ditch effort of the hero and the dying noble final thing. You know what I'm talking about. Anyways, I have saved the best and also the most controversial for last, and this one is about turns. Turn order. It doesn't make any sense, it slows the game down, and it's totally unintuitive. People are used to moving in real life, where things happen simultaneously. So here is my suggestion. Roll initiative, still roll initiative, but get rid of turns. There are no turns. If you want to do something, if you want to move, you just say so and you do so. Now keep in mind there are still rounds, so you can only still attack X number of times in a round and move 30 feet in a round. The only thing we have removed is the arbitrary and stupid turn order. And if there is ever a contention on who goes first, like if you have... And if there is ever a contention on who goes first, for example, you have one dude here and one dude here, and both of them want to attack each other first, just refer to the initiative order. Whoever is higher in the order gets to go first. Some people may say that this will break the game, but I really don't think so. And even if it does, as long as it's fun and interesting and cool, I don't care. Some people may also say that this will totally remove the need for attack of opportunity, because everyone can just move at the same time. And I say, good. Attack of opportunity really doesn't make any sense in its current iteration. The player's handbook describes an attack of opportunity as an attack to somebody moving past you. Now that makes sense. Moving away from you. That doesn't make any sense. Where is the opportunity there? So these are the changes that I would make. Now, to be totally honest, I have not tried all of them. I have tried some of them. Currently, I'm not running 5th edition, but when I am, I'm going to try all of them and give you a review of every single one. Now, here are some bad solutions I've seen to making combat interesting online. The first one is just narrate. Just add more narration and it's going to be more interesting. Now, this is true. If you narrate, it is going to be more interesting. But this is a bad excuse for the system. adding narration and doing extra work as the GM is always going to make combat more interesting in any system. So I think you should be doing narration in any parts at all times, but it's not going to fix the mechanical parts of your game. In 5th edition, unfortunately, we use narration to make combat fun in spite of its bad mechanics, not because of its good mechanics. So we're really using narration to fight against a bad design. It's not ideal, but I think you should be doing it. Another bad excuse is DMs saying, running away is always an option. If you make running away an option, your game is going to be interesting. No, this is not true. In the pulp fantasy genre, your characters are playing as heroes. Heroes don't run away. And even if they do, part of the expectation in the 5th edition meta is to just fight, not to run away. So if you want your players to know that running away is an option, tell them explicitly. Tell them, remember, running away is an option. Don't assume them to know, because they're not going to. And for the GMs out there who say this makes their game feel more real because this is what would really happen, even though I'm not saying the mechanic is bad, your reasoning is not good. That's what would really happen is the DM equivalent of that's what my character would do. It's not always a bad excuse, but many times it's used to justify really shitty behavior. So don't screw over your players, talk to them, tell them that in your game, running away is an option. Another thing some GMs talk about is using strategies and different monster combos and stuff like that. To me, this kind of hits like a DM who's min-maxing, like the player who's min-maxing. I don't think this is actually going to make combat any more fun. It's gonna make it more challenging numerically, but it's not gonna be more fun. That said, I think you can use some strategies, and you should, but don't go too overboard. Unless your players are there to play a strategic war game, it might not be that fun for them. Another thing some people say, and this is related to the missing category, how missing is not fun, that I talked about, is that HP or health is not really your vitality, it's kind of your heroic stamina, points, ability to avoid serious damage thing. I don't think anyone is actually convinced by this. This seems to me more like a silly abstraction that seems to just want to avoid the fact that sometimes D&D doesn't make sense. I think the fact that D&D doesn't make sense is okay. This is pulp fantasy. I don't think it's supposed to make sense. The other problem is if you start treating HP as like your ability to avoid damage, then what's the difference between HP and AC? And also there are certain instances where it just doesn't really make any sense. Like if you're in the mouth of a T-Rex and it's biting down on you, are you really not taking any damage? You're just losing your stamina somehow, dodging the teeth in the mouth. And lastly, just in case some people didn't get it, I really don't care about the balance of any of this. I think too many people, especially online, have this delusion that D&D has some grand sense of balance that if you disrupt is going to totally destroy your game. And I just don't think that's true. Just have fun, do interesting stuff. It's really not that complicated. You can change whatever you want about your game, and guess what? If it doesn't work, you could just tell your friends who you're running for, I don't think this works. Maybe we should just like, I don't know, change it, keep it raw, and then I'll go back, workshop it, and then we'll apply it again. It's really not a big deal. Anyways, those are my thoughts about combat and how to make it more interesting. I really don't think D&D 5th edition has good combat, which is a shame because it really is all about combat if you look at the books and the classes and what they actually do. But what you're gonna do? This has been GDS. If you liked the video, leave a like. If you want to see more, subscribe. I hear there is a bell that you can click and then it gives you a notification. You should do that. And let's see what else. Oh yeah, share the video. I think videos generally get pretty low view counts. So if you want more people to see this video, share it. Give it to your DM. Tell them, hey, stop sucking. And maybe you shouldn't say that. You know what? Maybe I should just sign out. I'll see you later.